He was just a father, heading home after a long day, with nothing more on his mind than his family waiting for him. But one encounter changed everything. A uniform, a smirk, and a cruel remark turned an ordinary evening into a moment that would test his dignity and reveal a shocking truth about power and prejudice. What the officer didn't know was that this man wasn't alone in his fight. And when the truth came out, it silenced the entire crowd. So, what really happened that night? Marcus Johnson was a man of quiet strength, a hard-working father of two, the kind who spent his evenings helping with homework and fixing bikes in the driveway. He wasn't famous, powerful, or wealthy, just a man doing his best for his family in a world that didn't always see him for who he was. On that particular afternoon, Marcus had just left his job at the local plant, his shirt still carrying the faint smell of oil and metal. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft orange hues as he drove toward home. To anyone passing by, it was an ordinary day. But for Marcus, the weight of being a black man in America was never far from his mind, an unspoken reminder with every glance, every pause too long, every silence that carried meaning. He had no way of knowing that the very respect he earned through years of sacrifice would soon be mocked in the most public way, and that the man who dared to humiliate him would regret underestimating who Marcus really was. The trouble began on an evening that should have been routine. Marcus had just parked near the grocery store, a stop he made countless times before heading home. With his work bag slung over his shoulder, he stepped out of the car, thinking only about grabbing milk for his kids' cereal. But before his feet even touched the pavement, a patrol car rolled up beside him. The window slid down, and a voice, sharp, mocking, cut through the air. "What's a man like you doing around here?" The words were casual on the surface, but the tone carried venom. Marcus froze. He wasn't speeding, he wasn't trespassing, he wasn't doing anything except living his life. But in that instant, none of it mattered. The officer stepped out, leaning on his badge and authority. His smirk widened as he circled Marcus, as if waiting for him to trip up, to flinch, to make a wrong move. Shoppers glanced over but quickly turned away, unwilling to get involved. Marcus could feel their silence pressing on him just as heavily as the officer's stare. "Hands out of your pockets," the cop barked. Marcus complied, his palms open, visible. He felt the sting of humiliation more than fear. A father, a provider, a man of dignity, being reduced to a suspect with nothing more than a glance. The longer it went on, the deeper the anger twisted in his chest. And then came the words that seared like fire. "Bet your kids are real proud. A black man teaching them how to break the rules." It wasn't just an insult, it was an attack on everything Marcus stood for. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough to draw blood without leaving a mark. Marcus wanted to speak, to defend himself, but he knew too well how fragile the line was between words and disaster. One wrong step, and this encounter could spiral out of control. His heart pounded as he weighed every second, every breath. The humiliation was unbearable, but survival meant swallowing it, for now. What Marcus didn't realize was that someone else had seen everything, someone with the power to change the course of this confrontation. And when that person stepped forward, the officer's smug confidence would shatter in an instant. The officer stepped closer, boots grinding against the pavement, his shadow stretching across Marcus like a threat. Each command grew sharper, louder, dripping with contempt. Marcus's chest tightened. His hands trembled in the open air, not from guilt, but from the unbearable weight of being cornered, humiliated, and judged for nothing more than the color of his skin. His heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the sound of passing traffic. In that moment, every story he had ever seen on the news came rushing back. Men who never made it home, fathers whose children grew up with memories carved by fear. The officer's hand hovered near his holster, his smirk now a mask of simmering authority. One false move, one twitch, and this ordinary evening could turn into tragedy. Bystanders shifted uneasily, phones lifted into the air, recording, but no one dared step closer. Marcus's dignity was on trial in the middle of a parking lot, and the verdict hung on the edge of a badge. Then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, a voice cut through the silence. Deep, firm, commanding. "Is there a problem here, officer?" Every head turned. From the crowd stepped a man no one expected, calm yet powerful in presence. The officer froze, his posture stiffening, his arrogance faltering in an instant. He knew that voice. He knew that face. It was the mayor, and in that moment the balance of power shifted, not just for Marcus, but for everyone watching. The officer's smirk vanished the moment the mayor stepped forward. His words, once sharp and cruel, dissolved into stammering excuses. The crowd that had stayed silent now found its voice. Murmurs turned into whispers, whispers into pointed stares. The man he mocked, belittled, and treated as less than human was not only respected, but connected in ways the officer never imagined. For Marcus, it wasn't about titles or politics. It was about something deeper, the moment when dignity was restored, not by force, but by truth. The mayor clasped Marcus's shoulder, not as a leader, but as a friend. In that instant, the narrative shifted. The victim of humiliation stood tall, and the one who wielded authority as a weapon was stripped of power before everyone's eyes. Yet even in that victory, a heavy truth lingered. Marcus's story was not unique. He was one of countless men and women who had been judged, mocked, and endangered simply for existing in their own skin. What happened that night was not just a single officer's cruelty. It was a mirror reflecting the deeper wounds of a society still struggling to see every person as equal. Marcus went home to his family, but he carried with him the reminder that respect should never depend on status, friendship, or recognition. It should be given because every life has worth. And so the question remains, how many more moments like this must play out in parking lots, on sidewalks, in quiet neighborhoods, before the world decides enough is enough?